Hey, this is like a really cool party, huh?
Yeah, I never miss this one. The DJ and dress code are the best.
I like your costume. What are you supposed to be?
Isn't it obvious? The hand from Talk to Me.
And welcome back to another history of Halloween. It's party time. Tired of her flowers being stomped on, the fantastic gardener, Elizabeth Krebs, came up with an idea she put into action at her home in Hiawatha, Kansas in 1914. If these tricksters were going to go around causing mischief, she'd find a way to win their favor and use up their energy. The old saying might not have been as old back then, but you will attract more flies with honey than vinegar. That was an idea Mrs. Krebs understood. She opened her home with games and treats for the kids and started the Hiawatha Halloween Frolic. Halloween parties carry many Celtic traditions that were brought over by immigrants from Ireland and Scotland and the UK. You've heard me say it before, but to understand the origins of Halloween, we have to go all the way back to its pagan roots and the many holidays and rituals that it borrows from, but predominantly they come from Samhain. Samhain was the time of the harvest festival. The Druids would have bonfires, slaughter any animals that were not going to make it through the winter, which would attract more animals preparing for hibernation. Altars of the last fruits, before spoiling, would be put out. These altars would attract bats. The people would dress in animal hides and conceal their identities from spirits. It could be easy to see how we draw lines from these images to current-day Halloween. But as we've gone over in trick-or-treating and jack-o'-lantern histories and other episodes, history is not a straight line. Traditions from Catholics, Protestants, pagans, and likely other local rituals blended together, then traveled across the Atlantic, blended together again, got stretched and had generations of change, forming what I believe is the most American holiday, and the last holiday which really brings the community together rather than isolating with family units. It's the holiday that we all get together at the party, go door to door knocking on our neighbors' homes, building displays in our yards, and inviting folks in, and finding ways to do this that is safe in times of need. Halloween has always been about adapting to the needs of the people celebrating it. Okay, but how do we celebrate it? That's where the bogey books come in. Do you still go through the checkout line at the grocery store and see the magazines that pop up with the craft and food ideas for every holiday? That's basically what these were. Costume ideas, what meals to prepare, decorations to make, even how to invite folks to your party. The 1920 edition opens by saying that Halloween is the one night of the year you're able to look into the future, settling your fate for the next 12 months. Conventionality may be set aside, all sorts of stunts and games should be used to entertain guests. Guests who should be encouraged to wear costumes in order to add a gay color note and fun in keeping with the spirit of the day. Among the games, a fairly common trend was Divination, a magic that allows you to see the future. Though not taken very seriously, the games were an enjoyable part of the experience of the holiday. A regular favorite was the pulling of the kale. Before they scared your uncle by being a salty, crispy snack, kids in the 1900s would walk blindfolded in the kale fields, grab a stalk, and rip it out of the ground. The shape of the kale was said to represent your future partner's body shape, while the amount of dirt that clung to its stem would determine your economic well-being. Another game you might play is with apple peels. This is a harvest festival after all, and part of the reason you have all these kids over is to put them to work making apple butter. There is a certain pride that comes from peeling the whole apple skin in one piece, which also worked well for the next game. By tossing the apple peel over your shoulder and deciphering any letters that it might spell out when it landed, it was supposed to determine the name of your future romantic interest. Pulling vegetables and throwing fruit isn't really your interest. Next we have the Halloween cake. A denser, more European-style cake than the fluffy sugar fests you can get at the chain grocer bakery. The Halloween cake was also a soothsayer. Items hidden in the cake would determine who the lonely cat dad spinster is going to be in your friend group. Just kidding, these were incredibly gendered, and of course, they were mostly focused on women when it comes to marriage. If you pull the thimble, though, you are going to be the spinster, and you better get used to having cat hair on all your clothes. If you pulled the penny, though, wealth was on the way, and a ring meant marriage was in your future. If you don't consider food to be a reliable source of telling the future, maybe try walking down some stairs, backwards, with a mirror in your hands. Keep your eyes on the reflection, though. Your future love's face shall appear at the bottom of the stairs. This does sound dangerous, but at least you have a mirror to see where the next step is. Believe in certain versions of this, you're also supposed to hold a candle up to the mirror, which I think just increases this to the level of extreme sport, but may also be the precursor to games like Bloody Mary. Okay, love and wealth aren't your concern. You, like me, are a bit more macabre. So we need a way to tell who's gonna die. Well, there's a ritual for that too. Although, it isn't in a bogey book to my knowledge. It is bonfire night according to the druids after all, so you should have a fire already. Now everyone collects a rock. Make sure you remember which one is yours. We are all going to toss them in the fire, and whoever's is gone the next morning will not make it to the next Halloween. Spiritualism and seances brought tools to use as a medium to speak with the dead, and the most common of those today is the Ouija board. First invented in the 1890s, this method of speaking with the dead is often used to ask if someone has a crush on the user or to scare a group of friends. Other games I remember from childhood in the 90s were the titular Bloody Mary, whereby invoking her name 3 times in a dark bathroom's mirror, you could conjure her. Another popular one in my youth was Light as a Feather, Stiff as a Board, which was popularized in the Craft movie. Halloween food. According to the bogey books, it's mostly sandwiches with marmalade, jellies, jams, and more sweet stuff, apples, and of course, chicken feed or candy corn, which we went over in the trick-or-treating episode. Contemporarily, Halloween is not really known for food outside of its sweet treats. But my tradition is usually pizza and too many pumpkin seeds for dinner while I'm watching horror movies. After that, I'll just snack on candy because I over-expect trick-or-treaters, or at least that's what I tell myself. We spend a lot of time talking about kids' costumes in the trick-or-treating history of Halloween, but adults spend more on their costumes, taking up more than half of the $3.6 billion spent on guising last Halloween. Adults do it differently than trick-or-treaters, though. Creativity and originality are rewarded with themed parties, best costume contests, and the blurring of lines between Halloween, Ren fairs, cosplays, and cons. People love dressing up. Throughout history, Halloween was the one time you could put down contemporary sensibility. Dressing in drag, being flamboyant, and discarding modesty have all been hallmarks of the holiday. Possibly being an outlet for many to be themselves in a more authentic way than the pressures of dominant society placed on them in other times. But how exactly did we get a sexy goldfish costume? Well, we can trace that back to World War II. Men at war were sent pinup cards, including the images of women portrayed as sexy witches, vampires, and more. Women seeing these pinup cards and wanting to appeal to the men returning for more began to recreate those costumes in real life. And now when you meet the love of your life dressed as sexy flaming hot Cheetos, you have those inspirational pinup cards to think of. Cultural appropriation and the history of racism is very real in Halloween. Within the last 10 years, there were depictions of characters and cultures and exotification of cultures that would pop up in Halloween shops. We've started to make a move away from this, but remember, somebody else's culture is not your costume. Alright, so now you've got some traditions figured out, you've got your costume, and you're looking for a party to go to. I've got some suggestions for the biggest ones in the world. Ones I'm interested in checking out myself. Maybe I'll see you at one. Europe's largest Halloween festival appropriately takes place in Ireland. Parades, fireworks, pub crawls, and more draw an average crowd of 40,000 attendees for this amazing event. I hope to one day attend this one myself. The many haunted houses, art installations, performers, and this traditional and ancestral setting of the holiday means if you're not in costume, you're sure to be the only one. Salem, Massachusetts is a city that now thrives on Halloween. In 1692 and 1693, more than 200 people were accused of being witches, 19 of which were brutally hung. As we've discussed, the holiday of Halloween has strong rooting in divination, spiritualism, and witchcraft. It's only fitting that the witches came back in numbers almost 300 years, not right to the day, to provide many ritualistic services, ceremonies, psychic readings, tarot, and more. It was not the new kid that lit the black candle, though. It was the city itself in 1982 who began promoting the Haunted Happenings Festival, drawing 50,000 attendees in its first year. The next party is a little bit more exclusive. Heidi Klum is a bit of a Hallow queen, though. Her parties are newsworthy for guests and costumes. Her earthworm costume in 2022 was especially amazing. It is the Hollywood Celebrity Halloween Party, and this year will be the 22nd of its kind. The last entry on this list, claiming to be the Halloween capital of the world, Anoka, Minnesota. They have house decorating contests, multiple parades, haunted houses, and more. Of the ones on this list, it is the closest to me, and a very bold statement given the contenders. I might just have to see it for myself. And that's all for this edition of the History of Halloween.